everyone, and welcome to another edition of the Team Daddy Weekly Recap. I am your host, Shapiro the Hero, aka Daddy Dreidels. After a brief one-week hiatus, we are back once more to go around the league looking at scores, stats, and standings. We saw our last winless team finally get on the board with their first win of the season this week, and a major shakeup in the standings that hasn't been seen since the league was founded. All that and more over the next 5 minutes, but as always, we start with a word from our sponsor. This week's sponsor is Golden Blossom Honey. As we enter the Jewish high holidays, beginning with Rosh Hashanah this past week, I'd like to wish everyone a sweet new year. And the best way to celebrate is with apples and honey. Specifically, Golden Blossom Honey. Look for the green and gold label. We'll start this week's recap off with last week's highest scorer, George. In case you missed it last week, George had the highest scoring team and the highest scoring player, earning himself $30. And George kept the hot streak going in week 5, beating Kyle 186.1 to 98.05. Jamar Chase led the way for George with 54.3 points, and George also got 25.2 points from Jordan Love. On the other sideline, Kyle was led by Derrick Henry with 16.6 points, but ultimately put up the lowest amount of points this week. After picking up his first win of the season in Week 4, Kyle finds himself back in the loss column after a difficult Week 5. Now at 1-4, Kyle will try to rebound in Week 6 when he and I square off, while 4-1 George will look for his 5th win in a row next week when he takes on Cheese. Speaking of Cheese, he finally got into the win column this week, albeit at my expense, coming away with a 174.75 to 162.5 win over yours truly. Darnell Mooney led the way for Cheese with 36.5 points, and Cheese also got 32.5 points from DJ Moore. My team was led by Captain Caleb Williams with 50.4 points, but I could not get enough supplemental scoring to earn a dub. Now at 2-3, I face a long road to the playoffs, but will look to take my first step in a Week 6 matchup with Kyle. Meanwhile, Cheese is now 1-4 and will try to double his season win total next week when he takes on George. Turning now to this week's highest scorer, we gotta change the music a little bit. Big John came away with some money this week and a win, defeating PJ 212.75 to 148.6. Joe Burrow led Big John's team with 58.7 points, and Big John also got 41.55 points from Captain Brock Bowers. On the other sideline, PJ was led by Captain DeAndre Swift with 30 points, but could not compete with the massive onslaught brought on by Big John. Our Gentle Giant is now 3-2 and will look to go make it back-to-back wins next week when he takes on Jed. Meanwhile, the Commish is now 2-3 and will try to get back to his winning ways in Week 6 when he faces off against Swans. Speaking of Swans, he took a tough L this week against Zach, losing 192.75 to 146.85 to the league's newest daddy. Zach was led by the week's highest scoring player, with Lamar Jackson leading all players with 68.85 points as team captain and earning him $10 in addition to the victory. Zach also got 34.1 points from Garrett Wilson and another 17 from the Vikings D on Sunday morning. On the other sideline, Swans was led by Tank Bigsby with 33.9 points, but ultimately drops his second game in as many weeks. Now at 2-3, Swans will try to turn it around next week when he takes on PJ, while 3-2 Big John will go for back-to-back wins in Week 6 when he faces Jed. Speaking of Jed, he pulled off an astronomical win this week, defeating Brett 132.45 to 116.58. Keeper CJ Stroud led the way for Jed with an astronomical 27.25 points, and Jed also got 23.2 points from Mike Evans. For Brett, it was Captain Justin Fields leading the way with 30.38 points, but he still ended up with a big fat L. Now at 1-4, the chances of Brett making the playoffs this season are astronomical, but stranger things have happened. He'll face yet another astronomical challenge in Week 6 as he faces Josh. Meanwhile, Jed is now 3-2 after getting back into the win column this week. He'll go for his second win in a row next week when he takes on Big John. Our final matchup of the week pitted Josh against Armenti, with both teams coming off wins the week before. However, when the clock hit 000, it was Josh who earned his second consecutive victory, defeating Armenti 175.25 to 140.25. Kyler Murray led the way for Josh with 31.05 points, and Josh also got 24 points from Captain Travis Kelce. On the other sideline, Armenti was led by Brian Thomas with 32.2 points, but ultimately came up short despite putting up the most optimal lineup on the field. Armenti is now 3-2 on the season, and will try to stay above 500 next week when he takes on Zach. Meanwhile, Josh now sits comfortably in a playoff position at 4-1. He'll go for his third win in a row next week when he faces off against Brett. Here are the Team Daddy standings after Week 5. George sits atop the standings for perhaps the first time in league history, but finds himself in a three-way tie with Zach and Josh, all at 4-1. One game back are Armenti, Jed, and Big John, all at 3-2. Behind them we have Swans, myself, and PJ, all 2-3, and fighting for playoff relevancy. Finally, we have a trio of 1-4 teams just outside the playoffs, with Brett, Cheese, and Kyle rounding out the standings. But with 10 weeks until the postseason, there's still a lot of wiggle room. I will be taking next week off from my recap duties, as Jen and I will be closing on our new home next week and moving the following weekend. I leave duties up for grabs for anyone who wants them, just please don't embarrass yourself in the process. And as usual, here is your weekly reminder to get your lineup set and to get your captain picks into Swans and Brett by 8 p.m. Eastern Time on Thursday night. Thank you as always for watching. This has been your Team Daddy Weekly Recap. I am your host, Ship Hero the Hero, and I will see you next time. L'chaim, motherfuckers!